Okay, ladies and gentlemen, well, thanks for coming along to Yes Benarty's third evening of speakers. Alan is an author and performer from pulpit. His novels include Boy Racers and Death of a Ladies' Man. In March 2012, Alan became a cultural ambassador for National Collective. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Bissett.
Thank you very much. And it's great to see a fantastic turnout on such a bleak night as this. Thanks very much for coming out, everybody. And hearing us out. If you're a don't know, or even if you're a no, the fact that you're here engaging with our side of the debate is very encouraging and very healthy in all sorts of ways, but I'm going to go on to that. I've been active in the independence movement now for about 2 years, doing stuff like this, and I thought I knew everything about it. I thought I knew all the arguments for, all the arguments against, but somebody said something to me last week that absolutely encapsulated it for me. It was Zara Kitson. I don't know if anybody knows her. She's in the Greens, and she does a lot of this kind of stuff as well. And she broke it right down to brass tacks. And she said, this is what she asks undecideds. So if you're an undecided just now, formulate an answer to this question in your head. She said, on the night of the referendum, 18th of September, do you want to be at a party organised by no, or a party organised by yes? And whatever way you answer is the way you should vote. Because essentially it's saying, who do you like better? Which side do you think represents the values that you're more comfortable with? Who do you identify with more? Now, try and imagine that you're at a party organised by the no side on a night that no win, and they're all celebrating. And you say, what is it you're celebrating? Their answer, essentially, will be, we are celebrating the fact that we managed to make Scots so afraid of themselves that they've voted to be ruled forever by a parliament that has proven time and time again it doesn't care about them. We are celebrating the fact that Scotland now will definitively be forever a region and not a country. We are celebrating the fact that we managed to obfuscate and distort and hide the true nature of this movement from the Scottish people so that now they trust essentially governments that they don't vote for to make their own decisions for them. That's what we are celebrating. Because that is what they'll be celebrating. And then try and imagine you're at a party organised by yes, and yes wins. What are you celebrating? We are celebrating the fact that we are now definitively a country that makes its own decisions and can steer its own future. We are celebrating the fact that we are now confident enough to make those decisions for ourselves. We are celebrating the fact that we have thrown off fear, that we are not afraid of ourselves. We are celebrating the fact that we now have dignity. And if there's one word that this comes down to for me, it's that, dignity. We'll be able to look ourselves in the eye and say, we now believe in ourselves as a people. Now, of course there's going to be problems. The no side like to pretend, oh, the yes claim, it's all going to be milk and honey. We're all going to wake up in the morning and somebody's going to deliver £5 notes to us every day. Of course there's going to be problems. Every country has problems. There's risk in any direction for any country, any time. But would you rather have risk with power or risk without power? There's always a risk somebody's mobile phone could go off. Right in the middle of a very passionate speech. But that person's got the power to turn that. And that's what it comes down to. Risk with power or risk without power. Because there's risk to staying in the union. who saw the crash coming in 2008. The people running the economy didn't see that coming. Alistair Darling, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time, and is now lecturing us on what we can and can't do economically, presided over the biggest financial crash the UK has seen in about 80 years, if you can work that one out. So of course there's risk, but we'll be in a position where we can make the decisions that will best suit us to face that risk. And even if those dangers exist, we don't know what the future's going to be, but I'll tell you this, it'll be better than we've got now. Because what we've got now is shit. Essentially. If we really think this is the best we can achieve as a country, this is the best we can have, then that means they've won already. That means they've managed to fool us in a country where living standards are plummeting, where there's now an ideological consensus from all three Westminster parties that there should be more cuts and more cuts and more cuts. Austerity is what they've pledged to permanently, not because it's good for the economy, but it's good for the rich. They've been trying to destroy the public sector basically since Thatcher. That was her project, that was a long-term goal. Shrink the public sector until it's like a deflated balloon. Now, we all depend on the public sector. The public sector provides services that we need: libraries, schools, hospitals, community centres, social work, all sorts of things that are vital to the health of a nation that they have pledged to reduce and reduce and reduce. Because there's not going to be a point where they stop and say, all right, that's enough now. Because this will be how George Osborne's argument runs, and anybody like George Osborne, well, the economy's improving. Okay, so can we start reversing the cuts? No. We can't go back to that, because that will then endanger the recovery. So if it gets worse, although if it gets worse, we've then got to make even more severe cuts. Now, none of the parties that are in favour of independence, none of them, the Greens, the Socialists, the SNP, none of them are in favour of cuts. All of them have a different agenda for Scotland, and that agenda will be giving the economy back to the people. Protecting the NHS, protecting the welfare state, building council houses again, scrapping nuclear weapons that cost us a fortune, not getting involved in illegal wars on behalf of American oil interests that not only lead to tens of thousands of deaths, but cost billions, essentially ensuring that the Scottish state doesn't replicate the UK state, which is this. It's a mechanism for funneling money from us up to them, the elites. That's what the UK state is. Even when we had the creation of the welfare state, the NHS, council housing after the Second World War, first of all, it required the trauma of the Second World War to initiate it. And secondly, the elites saw that it was working. That actually people in the UK did have a decent standard of living, did have full employment, did have trade union representation, did have workers' rights, did have a strong welfare state. They thought, we're gaining on us. We need to take this back. And that's why Thatcher had to happen. Because Britain was actually starting to become a good place to live for the people that live there. It wasn't benefiting the elites enough. The gap between the rich and the poor in this country was never narrower than it was in the 1970s. And all we've heard about the 1970s is trade union militancy. There was bin bags piled up in the streets. Actually, the gap between rich and poor was narrowing. And they took it back. They tore up the post-war consensus, which was that actually we should all look out for each other. And it's gone. It's no coming back. That Britain is in the past. But there is something that can regenerate it, that can waken that back up. We didn't need the trauma of another world war. What we need is Scottish independence. Because if we manage to scare the British state enough and show them that actually we will be a country that looks after its people, We will be a country that redistributes the wealth. We will go in that direction where you're going in that direction. It proves there's an alternative. It proves it can be done. And the rest of the UK will want it. There'll be an example right on their doorstep of a functioning democracy and a functioning economy. And they'll say, wait a minute, we were supposed to be propping Scotland up. They were supposed to be living off our subsidies. That's what they've been told. How come tiny wee Scotland is actually managing to do all the things that you've told us is impossible? And they're supposed to be this wee pissy bankrupt nation that needed us to survive. How are they managing to do it? And that's when you'll start to see them demanding a better class of politician. Because make no mistake, people across the UK, right across the UK, are completely detached from their political class. They've got no faith in them. They've got no faith in the entire upper layer. I mean, let's look at what's happened here in Britain in the last 5 years alone. The banking crash. The response to the banking crash was to give them billions, tens of billions of our money to keep that failed industry afloat. Then we had the expenses scandal in Westminster. You had the whole, the Murdoch Empire, all the phone tapping stuff. You've got various charges of institutional racism and corruption in the police. This is the entire upper layer of the British establishment, corrupt to the core. Now that's not to say that Scotland would be free of these temptations for the powerful, but we'll be able to keep a lot closer eye on them, because the rulers will be right there in front of us. And if we get even 51% of the people in this country voting yes, that's 51% of the people in this country who are awake, who've got their eyes open, who are going to be watching their government like a hawk. And if they start to see the same policies, the same system that they've rejected being replicated in independent Scotland, bam, they're done. The Labour Party, the Lib Dems, they'll be forced to look at themselves in the mirror, if you can see a reflection. They'll be forced to reassess who they are in this new independent Scotland. They'll realise, actually, if Scotland votes yes, that means the Labour Party as it exists at the moment has been rejected, that we don't trust them, that we know they're being worked for the back. And they'll have to say, well, what kind of party do we now need to be for an independent Scottish people to trust us again? They'll rediscover their soul. The SNP might drift to the right, who knows? And if they do, bam, they're down. Labour, a Labour Party that we actually want, will replace them. You've got the whole left bloc rising with radical independence, the Greens, the Socialist Party, the Commonweal Project, all of the voices in the movement that are saying, here's a different Scotland that we can have. They can consolidate as well, and essentially what we'll have is an eternal battle in Holyrood between the centre and the left, as opposed to what we've got in Holyrood, which is an eternal battle between the centre and the right. Because this is a left-wing movement. This is a people's uprising. And they know it. That's why they're trying so hard to crush it. This is a revolution that we're living through, folks. Now, we're all conditioned to think a revolution is bricks getting chucked through windows and cars getting set on fire. No, this time. It's a peaceful, democratic revolution for a people that are demanding better. We can make this a great country to live in. We can, and we will. Thank you.